Hello friends, welcome. I am going to share with you today a sequence that I really enjoy using when I'm traveling. So traveling wrecks the body, right? We sit for very long periods of time, whether on a plane or or in a car. And when we're on vacation, maybe we're carrying around heavy suitcases or heavy bags, or maybe you're carrying your children through the airport with a baby carrier or on your hip, and your body is just exhausted from carrying around, kids and bags and stuff and carrying it. Just it's traveling is super stressful and really takes a toll on our bodies, especially if you're traveling internationally, um, or across the country. So today's practice is going to be a short practice that you can do wherever. You don't even need a yoga mat. You can do it in a hotel room. You can do it at your in-laws. You don't need any props. If you have them, great, you can use them. But this sequence is going to be pretty easy, pretty basic, and is really going to target those areas that tend to become tight when we're traveling, like our low back and our hip flexors. Like our hip flexors get really tight when we're sitting for a long time. Our shoulders, our necks, all of those things get really irritated when we've been traveling for a long period of time. So let's get started. Go ahead and come to a tabletop position. So you'll come on to hands and knees. Bella is enjoying being a part of our practice today. So knees directly under hips, wrists directly under shoulders, and we're just going to take a few cat-cow. So for cat-cow, on your inhale, you can tuck the toes under if you like, drop the belly towards the mat or the floor, press the heart forward through the upper arms, and as you exhale, untuck the toes, round through the spine, press the floor away, lengthen your tailbone to the space between your knees. Inhale to come back to your cow. Look forward, reach forward with the heart, broaden through the collarbones. Exhale, press the floor away, round, round, round. Tuck the chin into the chest. A couple more. Kind of just take it at your own pace. Maybe your body needs one of these more than the other. I know I really like cat after traveling, and I kind of like to wag my hips from side to side to stretch out my back, which gets really irritated if I've been in the car for a long time. So feel free to hold one pose or to find movement in the pose as you like. 2 more rounds. Last one here. After your last cat, come back to a neutral tabletop. So I'm going to face you for this one so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to take some gentle neck rolls here in tabletop. So you can drop the chin down towards the chest and then roll the left ear towards the left shoulder and then back to center. Roll the right ear to the right shoulder, back to center, and just roll back and forth, trying to maybe move the opposite shoulder away from the opposite ear to get a little bit more of a stretch through the side of the neck. Rolling from side to side, working out the kinks. Maybe you're getting back from traveling and you've been sleeping in a hotel bed or a friend's bed that's not super comfortable. It's not your pillow, it's not your beds. Your neck is just really jacked and you're just like, I need some relief. Definitely do some neck rolls. And you can do these seated too. So you can sit up on the heels if you like here and do the same thing, rolling the neck from side to side. So let's come back to our tabletop. And we're going to come into a low lunge next. We're going to work out our hip flexors. So step the left foot forward in between the hands. And you may need to play with the distance between your legs. You may need to take it a little bit wider because we want this back knee to actually be behind the right hip. So You'll see here it's stacked on top. My hip is stacked on top of my knee, but as I start to shift my weight forward, my hip actually moves in front of my knee, which is what we want because that's going to allow us to get into that hip flexor at the front side of the hip. So walk the hands up onto the thigh. Maybe you feel more of a stretch there. If you're still not feeling it, walk that back leg further back a little bit and then come back up and see if you feel it now. I feel it now. So you can add the arms or not. You can keep them down at the hips. You might be tired. You may be just worn down and you don't feel like adding the arms. But you can, if you like, just inhaling the arms forward and up to come to your low lunge. Take a few breaths here. Fingertips lifted or hands on your hips, whatever you choose. Squaring the hips towards the short end of the mat. Letting the hips drop down towards the mat, while at the same time pressing a little bit through the front foot and the back knee, trying to reach those inner thighs toward each other for a little bit of resistance. So now we're going to come into a twist. So take the right hand to the outside of the left knee, and you can take that left hand back behind onto your low back. And we're going to twist towards your left thigh. Now the thing here is that we want to keep this left knee in proper alignment. So keep it stacked over the ankle and tracking over the midline of the foot. So we don't want to let the knee collapse in or fall away from the body. So this may intensify your hip flexor stretch. We're kind of stretching through the low back here, the obliques a little bit, the QL or the quadratus lumborum, all of those are getting a little bit of love here. Hold for 2 more breaths, sinking in, finding the deeper stretch if you can. And then we'll come back to center. Take the hands back down to the mat. Let's step the left foot back. Come back to your tabletop. Step the right hip or the right foot forward. We'll do the other side. So again, playing with the distance of your right foot and left knee, trying to bring the left knee behind the left hip. And we want the right knee stacked right over the right ankle, tracking over the midline of the foot. So you can walk the hands up to your thigh or take them to the hips, or you can inhale the arms forward and up. One thing we want to make sure of here is that our legs are emanating directly from our hips. So sometimes we tend to be too narrow and then we'll find ourselves wobbling a bunch. So you want to make sure your legs are at least hips width apart, maybe a little bit wider. Take a few more breaths here. Maybe walk that left knee back a little bit more if you need some more stretch here in this low lunge. And then we'll take the twist. So we'll take the left hand to the outside of the right knee. We'll take this right hand back behind onto our sacrum and low back. And then we're going to twist the upper body towards the right thigh. Trying to keep the spine stacked vertically, shoulders over hips, crown of head over heart. I hope you're feeling this. I know I definitely am. As you exhale, draw the belly in towards the spine, maybe twist a little more if it feels okay. And then we'll inhale to come back to center. Step the right foot back, come back to your tabletop. We're going to take the hands slightly forward of the shoulders, tuck the toes under. We're coming to downward facing dog. So feel free to keep the knees nice and deeply bent on this one. So we're going to lift the hips, lift the kneecaps up off the mat. I'm going to keep my knees really bent here because I really want to get a stretch through my low back. And by bending the knees, so if you take a look up here, you'll see that if I straighten my legs, my back rounds a little bit. So I'm getting a really strong stretch in the hamstrings, but not so much in my back. But when I'm able to bend my knees, I'm able to find more length in my spine and get more of a stretch in the low back rather than the hamstrings. I still feel it in my hamstrings, but it's a little bit more balanced for me. So bring the ears in line with your biceps. Press the chest toward the upper thighs. Lift the hips. One more breath. And on your next exhale, you'll take the knees down to the mat. We're going to take a little mini vinyasa here. So bring the hips forward, stacking the shoulders over the wrists. We're coming into a modified chaturanga. So you can keep the tops of your feet flat or lift them, your choice. Hugging the elbows in towards the ribs, hugging the belly button up towards the spine. We're going to slowly lower the body all the way down to the mat. And we're going to come into a cobra here. So it's your choice on how far you want to come up for cobra, or maybe you just want sphinx pose. Sphinx is a really nice one here. So take your choice. Sphinx pose with the elbows stacked directly under shoulders and the arms parallel like the number 11, or you can take the palms underneath the shoulders and press the torso up. For your version of cobra, however high you want to bring the body, pressing the tops of the feet down into the mat, thighs are active, kneecaps lift. Draw the shoulder blades down the spine, reach the heart forward, lengthen through the back of your neck. And then exhale all the way back down to the mat, and then we'll inhale to press up to our tabletop once more. So now we're going to come into pigeon pose, which is one of my favorite poses. So take your left knee to your left wrist and take your shin diagonally across the body, and then begin to walk that right leg back behind you until you feel a nice stretch in the outer hip here. And it's okay if your hip doesn't, totally come down to the mat. You could always take a folded up blanket or a pillow and just wedge it under there. And for your upper body, you can stay lifted with your upper body, or if you're tired, you may just want to take the upper body down to the mat, round through the spine a little bit. Maybe take a pillow under your torso, so have another pillow right here that you can just lay on and relax. We're just taking a few breaths here in pigeon, feeling a outer hip stretch, stretching through the hip flexor a little. Just resting here. Breathing deep. And if pigeon is just not working for you today, that is totally okay. You can come onto your back and you can do figure 4 stretch instead. It's basically just pigeon upside down. So you'll cross the ankle over the knee and come into this stretch. So you get the same stretch in the outer hip. It's a little less intense, and it may be better for your knees, especially if you're just not feeling pigeon today. So for those of you in pigeon, we're going to slowly walk the hands back towards the body, and we're going to take the left leg back, coming back into our tabletop. For those of you in figure 4, you're just going to switch legs. For the ones doing pigeon, we'll take the right knee to the right wrist now, shimmy that right shin diagonally across the body, walk the left leg back until you feel comfortable with the sensation. If you're starting to feel pain or tingling or anything like that, maybe just back off a little bit, add some pillows or a folded up blanket under your right hip to support you. And then when you feel like you want to, you can start to walk the upper body down towards the mat, maybe taking it back down to your pillow, maybe taking the forehead onto stacked fists, which feels nice, not quite as intense as taking the forehead all the way down to the floor. Whatever works for you. Breathing into that right hip, like your breath was a flashlight that you wanted to shine in to that right hip, allowing the muscles to begin to soften and relax. Breathing into the sensation of the stretch. 2 more breaths. Unhinge the jaw. Soften the mouth. Okay, we're going to come into a fun little transition here. So start to walk the hands back towards the upper body. You're going to take the right hip down to the floor and kind of shift your hips around a little bit. For those of you in figure 4, just come up to seated. And we're in an open hip Janu Sirsasana, or head to knee pose. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do this pose 2 ways. So your left leg is going to be out straight, your right sole of foot is going to be into the left thigh. We're going to turn a little bit towards that left leg and start to walk the hands down the leg, feeling this stretch. I know I feel it in my hamstring and my inner thigh a little bit. Keeping the left toes lifted. And if the open hip version doesn't feel great, you can always just come to the closed hip version with your leg coming straight out from your left hip. Totally up to you as to what feels nice today. We'll take one more breath here, and then we're going to come into the revolved version of the pose. So we're going to take the left forearm inside the left shin, and we're going to sweep that right arm up and over. And this changes the pose a little bit. So now you're going to feel this stretch more in the right side of the body, the right side of the lower back, maybe even into the right hip. So I really love this one after I've been in the car for a while, because my QL, which is the muscle that extends from the lumbar spine down to the top of your hip and actually attaches to your low ribs as well. This big square muscle on the side of your lower back. Mine tends to really get tight when I've been driving a long time, so this feels really nice. It's a good stretch. And then we're going to switch sides, so we'll come back up and we'll bend the left knee, extend the right leg. Again, you can do the open hip or the closed hip version of the pose, up to you. We'll turn the body towards that right leg and hinge the upper body forward, walking the hands toward the right foot. It's called head to knee pose, but you don't actually have to touch your head to your knee. Just wherever you are, breathe into the sensation, breathe into the stretch. And then we'll do the revolved version, so taking the right forearm to the inside of the right shin, sweep the left arm up and over for a side body stretch. Hello, Bella. Keeping that left sit bone grounded down into the mat or the floor. Extending through the spine, bringing the neck in line with the spine. Inhale to come back up. So we're going to do one more stretch. And this one may be a little bit intense, but it's really good if you've been doing a lot of walking, or maybe you've been at Disney World and your feet are really hurting. So we're going to transition back onto our knees, and this time we're going to tuck the toes under. So I'll move the kitty cat out of the way so you can see. So tuck your toes under. And then you're going to sit your hips back towards your heels and walk the hands towards the knees. So you may want to come all the way up onto the thighs. That's going to make the stretch much more intense on the soles of the feet. So you can be here, or you can have the hands down on the mat still, and that is going to lessen the intensity of the stretch. Another option here, if you've been driving, you may enjoy a wrist stretch here. So I'm actually turning my fingers back towards my knees, and I'm pressing into the palms of the hands, so I'm stretching my forearms, which feels really nice. So a couple options here, just whatever feels nice. And if you want to do a couple breaths with the hands up on the thighs, and then do a couple breaths with the hands down on the mat, you can definitely do that. Just take a peek back and make sure that little pinky toe is tucked under as well. Sometimes you might need to help it forward. Come on, little guy, tuck under. Two more breaths. Maybe trying the wrist stretch if you haven't already. And then releasing everything to come back up. And we'll come into a seated position. So now we're going to stretch through the shoulders a little bit. I promised you something for the shoulders. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the hands into cactus arms. And I want you to take the left elbow under the right elbow. Hook them into each other and take the backs of the hands together. And then if you can, tuck the left fingertips into the right palm. We're coming into eagle arms. If this is not working for you, you can just give yourself a hug with the right arm on top and kind of try to take the fingertips back around to the shoulder blades and see if you can give yourself a little massage with the fingers. So if you do have the bind, if you have the eagle arms, you really want to press the forearms together like you were trying to flick your upper or your arms apart. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tuck the chin into the chest. And now you're really going to start to feel a stretch between the shoulder blades and the back of the neck. So here you want to think about spreading your shoulder blades away from each other and wrapping them around the sides of your body. So breathe into the upper back here. Press the elbows away from the torso. Press the forearms into each other. And then we'll inhale to come back up and exhale to release. And then we'll switch. So come back to your cactus arms and then take the right elbow underneath the left elbow this time and tuck the right fingers into the left palm. If you are doing the hug version, then you'll just switch and have the left arm on top. And you can still do the chin to chest with the hug. So come back to those eagle arms, pressing the elbows away from the body, wrapping the shoulder blades around your sides, pressing the forearms toward each other, and taking the chin into chest if you like. And maybe this time you want to round forward a little bit more. So finding a little bit more of a rounded back here, if that feels good to you. Kind of bowing forward. Breathe here. And then we will inhale back up, release the arms. Your last pose, legs up the wall. This one's really great for if you've been doing a lot of walking, a lot of sitting. We're going to help the heart out a little bit, which I'll explain in a minute. So what you're going to do is come up against the wall or a hotel bed, whatever you have available to you. You can do legs up the wall at the side of the bed as well. So take, for this example, your left hip is going to be down on the floor and your right hip is going to be up in the air, and you're going to take your booty all the way to the wall, bend the knees like you're a mermaid, and take both feet into the wall. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do one big movement. So take your left side of the body down to the floor, and then we're going to swing the legs up the wall or up onto the bed, whatever you have available to you. And if your seat is not touching the wall, you may just want to scoot it forward a little bit. Settle in here, let your hips become heavy. You don't have to do anything special with the feet here. You can just let them be relaxed. So the great thing about legs up the wall is normally our heart is fighting against gravity to get the blood from our feet pumping back up. So when we invert like this and we take the legs above the heart, we are helping the heart pump the blood from the legs more easily. So our blood pressure may go down. You may feel better in the legs after this. A lot of people um, say this inversion helps with um, maybe some swollen ankles, swollen feet. This one is also great for headaches. I just love legs up the wall. I actually had a teacher that had sandbags in her yoga studio, and she would lay sandbags across the bottoms of our feet. And may sound weird, but it felt amazing because it really pressed your feet down and pressed your hips down into the floor, and it felt so good. So I encourage you to stay here as long as you want, as long as you can. And when you're ready, you'll just roll to one side and come to sit up. Take a deep breath. Thank you for practicing with me. I hope you feel better. Like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and many blessings to you and your family. Namaste.